guest speaker, Reverend Mark Hicks. Most of you know him as the founder and creator of and organizer of TruthUnity.net. How many of you have been on TruthUnity.net? Raise your hand. Many of you, and those of you who haven't, you should do it. I don't want to tell you what you should do, but you should do it. It's fantastic. You go on there and you can hear you can hear the Fillmores, you can hear many of the Unity Masters that have come through time, Eric Butterworth and so many. So it's such a great resource for study. 3,000 people a day about show up to get inspiration from that site. So that's pretty incredible. Mark also wrote Credo of a Metaphysical Christian. And most recently, he was the editor and organizer of the Fillmore Bible, which I introduced here a couple weeks ago. And by the way, Mark, we're already sold out, my brother. So we're going to be I went in to ask our bookstore manager, Nancy, to display them, and they were like, we're sold out. So we're going to be putting in an order like 5 minutes ago to get more of those. And he's going to tell you a little bit more about what that Bible is and maybe how it was created. Mark was credentialed as a LUT in 2010, wasted no time before creating his first church in Georgetown, Texas. And just a few weeks ago, I was in Georgetown, Texas, thinking there should be a Unity here. And so you were ahead of my thought on that by at least a decade to create a Unity in Georgetown, Texas. And most recently, was the minister in Baltimore, Maryland, where he lives now to be closer to his family. He, along with his wife, Marika, have raised 2 daughters. So if you write a credo on that, I would like to read it. I've got some questions for you on that. Please give a warm Unity welcome for Reverend Mark Hicks.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you for being here.
Okay. Thank you for having me. It's good to be back. This was the first Unity church I walked into, and that was the 1980s. My wife, we were living in Shreveport. I was raised in the Bay Area, born in the Bay Area of San Francisco, raised in Pennsylvania, and right out of college moved to this little town outside of Shreveport. My father had started a business, and I was the second or third employee, and I was there 25 years, and I met my wife there, who was a Belgian who came to teach French in Louisiana public schools. She was in Louisiana, but not of Louisiana, and that was good enough for me. Well, Dallas was the big vacation spot. We were in Shreveport. In Dallas, we came to have fun. We'd come over, and we'd go to Olla Podrida. Do you remember that? And that was the first place we hit, and it was just wonderful. And we were there one Saturday morning, and I was reading in the paper that there was a workshop being given at a Methodist church by a woman named Jan Sanders, whose husband happened to be the federal judge named Barefoot Sanders, nominated by Lyndon Johnson. You may know of her, or may know of him. And it was on political advocacy for churches. And I was churched in Shreveport, and I wanted to go to it. So I filled out the form. This is long before internet and email. Sent it in. Come to find out, it was Mother's Day weekend. And that was before you could buy flowers. You know, the blue laws, nothing was open Sunday. You couldn't buy flowers. If my wife was going to get flowers for Mother's Day, I had to either buy them in Dallas, or she wasn't going to get flowers. So I left early, got here, got in time, found a florist shop, bought a bouquet of flowers, and then drove over to this Methodist church and walked in with this great big bouquet of flowers. It was hot out. I couldn't leave them in the car. Jan Sanders took one look at me, and she said, "Oh, you're the one coming from Louisiana, aren't you?" And see, Jan had a social hierarchy. There was Longhorns, and there was Aggies, and then there was Cajuns. It kind of went east. But that was a great time. When my daughters got to be, we had children, and when they got to be in elementary school and middle school, the first time they got straight A's, we decided we had to celebrate. So we decided we were going to go back to Dallas. And we went swimming at the Marriott Quorum, which had an indoor swimming pool. And we went to the Galleria, and I gave my daughters, these were like 7 and 10 years old, I gave them each $20 in the Galleria. And they went nuts. And they got straight A's a whole bunch of times after that. So that's my connection to Dallas. And I'm glad to be here. The second church I went to was Unity Hills in Austin, some 10 or so years later. I want to speak for a moment about how the Fillmores, with no money, no education, no social status, and no bureaucracy, were able to build a spiritual movement in less than 20 years, fully fledged in 40 years, with dozens of Unity churches all over the country, including Unity of Dallas. How did they do that? And I forgot my clicker. Just a second. See these 5 people? Did they have any money? Were they famous? Did they have great athletic skills? Were they genius philosophers? No. These 5 people, and we all know them, were human beings with a human message. And they changed the world. And many of us can say they changed us. But they certainly changed the world. And it was an example of what I call one-on-one ministry. All spiritual movements begin not with a bureaucracy, not with an organization, not with a charter, not with a board of directors, but by someone who's doing one-on-one ministry, and their message is that I am a human being, you are a human being, and I have a message of what a human being is and what you are. And so, I think the phrase that best describes unity is, I see the Christ in you. And what that means to people may differ. The important thing is, how does it mean, what does it mean to you? And sometime in the next 2 months, we're probably going to be at some Christmas social. And it might be with family, it might be at our business, Christmas party, it might be a neighborhood party. And someone's going to come up to you, and eventually people are going to ask about you, and it may, do you go to church? Especially if they're evangelical. Okay? Now, how do we respond to that? And you know what the big question is? Well, I go to Unity of Dallas. And what is the next question that's going to come? What's unity? Yeah, what's unity? And what I want to do today is give 3 answers. I want to suggest 3 things that we can say that invite a dialogue, but at the same time are true to who we are. In other words, they're not coy. We're not playing games. We're being honest. But at the same time, don't scare anybody, doesn't drive anybody, thinking strange things, that reaches out for common ground. 3 things I have found that is a wonderful way to introduce enter into a conversation about what is unity, especially with someone who is already steeped in the Christian tradition, either a Catholic or an evangelical or a mainline Protestant. Or it could be a Jew or a member of Islam. I mean, it could be others. But it's especially going to, I think, ring true for those who are in the Christian camp. So I have some questions. No, I'm one slide up, excuse me. The answer, I'm embarrassed, I had inserted a slide. Where I'm headed, this is my where I'm headed slide. Okay, this is the slide that kind of gives you the overview, and then I'll head into that. We typically feel that the Christian message is creation, sin, judgment, and redemption. That is the meta-narrative that most of us who grew up in traditional Christianity learned, particularly if we're in the evangelical camp. So there was this creation, but in the garden, we sinned, humanity sinned. Humanity is judged and cursed forever, but Jesus came, and through his atonement activities, I am forgiven, and now I am right with God. Creation, sin, judgment, and redemption. That is a meta-narrative. And what I mean by that is it is so deep in our subconscious mind, or at least the mind of traditional evangelical Christians, it's so deep in their mind that it flavors everything they see. It's like lenses, and it's hard to see beyond that. And the person that you're speaking to at the Christmas party may come from that lens. And here's the big picture. The point of my talk is unity has another meta-narrative. And the other meta-narrative is not steeped in Christian theology, it's steeped in what we call metaphysics and mysticism. And if you take more of David's classes in metaphysics, the overall goal of learning metaphysics is changing your meta-narrative, changing our meta-narrative. So we no longer think of ourselves as born in sin, but we see ourselves in another way. And that other way has three words: mind, idea, and expression. And that is the metaphysical meta-narrative for Unity's teachings. And I want to give some slides on how we convey that. So now I'm going to the slide I was looking for. What is the first thing when a baby is born? This is a trick question, by the way. What is the first thing a baby must do in order to flourish? No. It's a trick question. And it's not cry. It's the baby must bond. We all know that, right? We all know that. And in unity, bonding is called oneness. There's but one power and one presence in my life and in the universe, God the good, omnipotent. But one power. We are one. Not only with God, but with each other. And if in unity, the first order of business, coming into this church, becoming a member of this community, participating in metaphysical religion, is attaining a consciousness of bonding, of oneness. I have a right to be here, is what we must say. I am not broken. And most importantly, we are not born in sin. We are born in bondedness. That is what we say to the person at the coffee hour. What is unity? It is a belief where we are not born in sin. We are born in bondedness. And put a period on it and stop. And watch their eyes. Watch their eyes. It's all you have to say. And if this Unity Church is anything, it is a center for bondedness. Everybody's in. we are one. There's an affirmation, comes from Hypatia Hasbrook. She wrote a book called Handbook of Positive Prayer. She's a long-time Unity minister. She has 3 affirmations, and this, in my opinion, is the most powerful affirmation that's ever come out of Unity. My mind and the mind of God are one. You see, we think that our minds are private. We think that I'm alone in knowing my weakness. We think that my brokenness is something I have to hide. Metaphysical religion says, no, there's only one mind in the universe. Only one divine mind. We as human beings, not as other forms of life, we as human beings partake in that one mind. God, my mind and the mind of God are one. My thoughts are not private. God already knows my weaknesses, and God already has loved me and continues to hold me. That is the Unity message. Now, you can get into that with the person in the coffee hour, but all you have to say is we're not born in sin, we're born in bondedness. Allow the conversation to go from there. So, Unity principle number 1 is oneness. Now, I'm going to take a little excursion here and tell you how I got into these 3 Unity principles instead of 5 Unity principles. Have you ever heard of the 5 Unity principles? Right? And I think you had a minister, Ellen Davenport, I think. She was the minister here. She wrote a book about the 5 Unity principles. They're wonderful principles. I don't disagree with any of them. But they're not appropriate for a conversation with the person in the coffee hour. What they're basically categories of Unity beliefs. Somebody came along and looked at all the Unity beliefs and they put them in 5 categories. And those 5 categories are the 5 Unity principles. And so they're very appropriate for trying to get our arms around Unity's large teachings, but they're categories. What I'm talking about is principles. Let me tell you how I found the 3 principles. See, we had moved to Austin, my wife and I, in 2001, and our daughter finished high school there, and she wound up she went to University of Texas, and she went to grad school at A&M, and is married to an Aggie. And by the way, the 2 got 3rd place in Austin American Statesman's cutest couple contest because he was an Aggie and she was a Longhorn, which is a great story. Anyway, so I was a licensed teacher, and I started going over to College Station to visit my daughter and her boyfriend. And so I started holding classes there. And I started teaching the 5 Unity principles. Now, some of you are not going to appreciate this joke, I know, but I had a problem. And the problem is it was College Station. So there were a whole lot of people there from Texas A&M. So I had to reduce it from 5 Unity principles down to 3. Okay. Jan Sanders would have appreciated that joke. Okay. But let me tell you something. Simplicity is the name of the game. And the Aggies don't go for the fluff. The Aggies go for the essences. And they taught me to be what I call an Aggie minister. A minister who doesn't talk about 5 Unity principles, talks about 3 Unity principles. And the reason is in the coffee hour, when we're engaged with others, that is where we need to be. Okay, so that's my excursion, okay? And forgive me, but my daughter's an Aggie, my son-in-law's an Aggie. I love the Aggies. I was going to wear an Aggie hat here, but so don't. Okay, second question. When that baby is born, it grows up to be a toddler, right? What does the toddler need to do in order to have a flourishing life? Can you yell it out? Huh? Love? Play, thank you. There you go. Eric Butterworth called it flow. The second part of the meta-narrative, mind, idea, and expression, is idea. Ideas are admitted by God mind. My mind is the mind of God. God sends divine ideas into my mind. And they can be strange ideas. I might be a policeman. I might be an NFL quarterback. Talk about strange. But not to this boy. This boy is in the business of working through divine ideas that are coming to him. He's playing. Now, Unity churches, if they're anything, is a great big playground. It's where there's a whole bunch of workshops where we color and we dance and we talk about prosperity and we talk about our divine greatness. And people look at us, come on. But it's for real. If you don't play, you don't grow. Right? Now, the problem in Unity is most people want to do that until they're about 60 or 70 years old. Okay? But the point is, a baby has to play, and that is why so much of Unity, let's go back to creation, sin, judgment, and redemption. Where is the play in creation, sin, judgment, and redemption? Where is it? It's not there. Unity has replaced it, mind, idea, and expression. I am in idea phase right now. It's green light. I have no limits. I have an attitude of gratitude because I have total potential. That is the second Unity principle. Now, the principles that roll into that is I create my experiences by the activity of my thinking, and prayer is the most powerful form of, the second, the third, and the fourth Unity principle. It's there, it's condensed down, but we got it in our metaphysics. And there's an affirmation, with godlike thoughts, I think into being a godlike world. What we do when we are in idea phase of consciousness is we use godlike thoughts and we think into being, into our consciousness, a godlike world. It may not yet be manifest, but it is here and I've got it straight in my mind. That is the second Unity principle. Third question. Most of you know who this gal is, right? What is the third thing a human being must do in order to live a full, flourishing life? They must express. They must take that God mind they have, the ideas, the rich ideas that came to them, and they must put them into expression. Fifth Unity principle, we must live out, what we believe. And this gal we know had incredible challenges and still does, and as do women in general and women in particular in some cultures. And the affirmation coming from Hypatia Hasbrook is, I send forth only thoughts of good, and good returns in overwhelming measure. It is what we do as adults, as fully functioning adults. And that is what Unity nudges each of us as congregants to do. To express, to venture forth. You had Donald Curtis. Did you know a woman who worked for him named Marge Cass? Anybody remember Marge Cass? Did any here know Marge Cass? David does. Others, a few of you. Donald Curtis put her on the road. Put her in a Mary Myler van back in the 70s. She drove around the country launching unity churches all over Texas, all over the country. Donald Curtis was smart enough to know that the woman was aligned with God mind, clearly had great ideas, and needed a channel to express them. And I don't know the particulars of how much support she got, but I do know that it came out of Unity of Dallas and Donald Curtis's pastorship here. So the affirmation that Melania would say is, I radiate only good. The actual affirmation is, I send forth only thoughts of good, but good returns an overwhelming measure. But as an adult, as a fully functional adult, I radiate only good. And I can't stress enough how deeply this meta-narrative of mind, idea, and expression runs in unity. And it's not just a formula for flourishing, it's also how we look at the Trinity. We have traditionally God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, which is a complete mind bender for most people, right? But if we think of God mind as God the Father, if we think of Jesus as God the grand idea, the divine idea, who proceeds from the Father, and we think of the Holy Spirit as the expression of God mind and God Jesus coming forth, then we have mind, idea, and expression in the form of a theological narrative. So if you're raised Christian and you wondered about the Trinity and it applies there. It runs everywhere in our beliefs. That's the theological explanation. There's a psychological explanation. Unity teaches that we are spirit, soul, and body. And the spirit is God mind. The soul is the idea. It's the heart, both subconscious and conscious. And then the body is our physical body. And let me just make a point. It's not well understood in unity, but unity is arguably the only denomination today, at least, who says that the body should be as redeemed as the soul. We know that we grow old. We're aware of that. But it is not normal, according to Charles Fillmore. And one day, just as we have these visions in Revelations, we have visions of a second coming, we have visions of a time when we will be so steeped in spirit and soul that our bodies will actually regenerate. That's a hard teaching for a lot of people. I realize that. But it is a wonderful aspiration. It is a wonderful choice to look to. Nah, I don't need the other donut. I'm regenerating my body, I say to myself. Okay? It's at least an aspiration. So it runs deep. Mind, idea, and expression actually frames everything. And if you are steeped in that mind, idea, and expression, when you talk to that person at the coffee hour, and you are comfortable in your awareness of your unity with God, your bondedness, if you are comfortable with the idea of play, if you are and allowing kind of bizarre behavior because it's a child at play, being tolerant of people trying things, exploring new spiritualities, maybe changing gender. I don't know. It's not for me, but who am I to deny someone else the play to explore? And if you are comfortable with your expression, in other words, you do not have regrets, saying I coulda, shoulda, woulda, but I couldn't because of, if you have laid that down, then you are ready to have that conversation in that coffee hour. And you are ready to do one-on-one ministry for this Unity of Dallas. As a prayer chaplain or an associate, or perhaps going into the ministry, a licensed teacher, or perhaps just hanging out at Starbucks and looking for people who are looking at tough times. So let me just close with a beautiful picture of a deer jumping. How many of you have seen a deer jumping a fence? And in a almost magical way. You wonder, how could they possibly do that? Or have seen a deer climb a hill up into mountains, the hind, where they're able to go up there. There's an author I'm reading who's really impacted me, and he quotes this. This is his verse. He has staked his whole spiritual foundation on this verse. God makes my feet like hinds' feet, like deer's feet, and sets me on high places. Psalms 18:33. What does he mean by that? What he means is that the rear feet hit exactly, they're in perfect alignment with the front feet. That is the accepted scientific explanation for why deer can do that. It's a perfect alignment. And for us, when we are expressing in perfect alignment with the divine ideas that come to us in playful, imaginative times, and we know that those divine ideas are coming from God who loves me, who I am bonded with, then we are in perfect alignment, and then my life is like hinds' feet, and I can be set up into high places. Now, I've tried to give to you is what these 5 metaphysicians that I introduced in the beginning, starting with Nelson Mandela and ending with Cesar Chavez. What did they do? How did they do that? No money, no education, or no social status. They didn't come up in a family with a lot of riches or prestige. They weren't great athletes, great singers, great philosophers. None of that. How did they do it? They did it because they saw human beings as human beings, they saw themselves as human beings, and they were fully convinced of their own divinity, and they had a message, particularly Fred Rogers, a message that you as a human being also are perfect in the eyes of God. And therefore, we should treat them that way. If everyone in this congregation had that consciousness and was doing that one-on-one ministry, this congregation could start a movement just as rich as what the Fillmores did in 1890. And so I put out a post this morning on Truth Unity, and it had 4 audio files from Donald Curtis giving a talk at Unity Village in 1981 on the metaphysics of Emerson. And I sent out a mail out this morning, and I got 3 or 4 people came back, Donald Curtis. I came into Unity because of Donald Curtis. I don't know the man. Some of you may. I can tell you, I am assured that he had a message that was perfectly aligned with God mind, perfectly aligned with divine ideas, perfectly aligned with his own human expression. That is your legacy. That is your greatness. Thank you very much.